I never thought the word inheritance would feel like a curse. For most people, it means security, stability, a lifeline for the future. But when the lawyer read my husband's will that morning, I felt like the ground had crumbled beneath me. The office smelled faintly of leather and old books, the kind of place David used to say gave him headaches. I sat stiffly in the chair, my hands folded in my lap, twisting my wedding band round and round on my finger. The ring had left a permanent groove on my skin, as if it wanted to remind me of its weight even when it was gone. Across from me sat my son, Daniel. 27, confident, arrogant. He leaned back in his chair, dressed in one of those expensive suits he loved to show off. His phone buzzed in his palm, but he ignored it, his smirk plastered across his face like he already knew he'd won. Mr. Harris, the lawyer, cleared his throat and opened the folder. His voice was calm, practiced, but I could hear the stiffness in it as he read. As per the last will and testament of Mr. David Johnson, the estate will be divided as follows. I held my breath. David had been everything to me. My anchor. My partner. My safe place in a storm. He'd been a civil engineer, respected across Dallas for the buildings he designed. People called him meticulous, visionary, practical. And he had been all of those things. But to me, he had been a man who remembered my favorite tea, who left notes on the fridge telling me I looked beautiful, who squeezed my hand in church even after 30 years of marriage. Now, all that was left of him were the words on a piece of paper. To his son, Daniel Johnson, Mr. Harris continued, he leaves the downtown penthouse apartment, as well as the majority of his financial assets. I felt my heart dip, though I told myself it made sense. Daniel was our only child. David loved him dearly. Of course he would want his son to be provided for. And to his wife, Maria Johnson, the lawyer said, pausing as though he didn't quite understand it himself, he leaves the garage property on the outskirts of the city, along with its contents. Silence filled the room. I blinked. Surely I had misheard. Daniel's laugh exploded into the stillness. A garage. He turned to me, his eyes glinting with cruel amusement. That's what you get, Mom? A dusty old garage? Meanwhile, Dad leaves me a penthouse and millions? Unbelievable. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. Mr. Harris cleared his throat, looking uncomfortable. That is the wording of the will. The garage and everything inside it belongs solely to Mrs. Johnson. Daniel shot to his feet, his chair scraping harshly against the wooden floor. This is insane. She's a useless old woman. What's she going to do with a garage? She can't even change a light bulb without help. The words hit me like a slap. Useless old woman. I lowered my head, blinking fast against the sting in my eyes. These were Mr. Johnson's wishes, Mr. Harris said firmly, closing the folder. Daniel snorted. Fine. Let her keep her junkyard. I'll take the penthouse. He stormed out of the office without another glance at me. I sat frozen in my chair, my fingers trembling in my lap. I could still hear his voice echoing in my head. Useless. That night, the house didn't feel like mine anymore. Daniel made sure of it. He stood in the doorway of my bedroom, his face hard, his arms crossed. You can't stay here, he told me flatly. Dad left this place to me. Pack your things. I stared at him, shocked. Daniel, I'm your mother. I have nowhere else to go tonight. He shrugged. Not my problem. My suitcase landed on the bed with a dull thump. He'd already pulled it out of the closet for me, like he'd been waiting for this moment. Tears burned my eyes as I packed. Every shirt, every sweater, every photo frame I placed into the bag felt like a piece of my life being stripped away. When I finally closed the zipper and carried it to the door, the house seemed to sneer at me. It had once been filled with warmth, laughter, Sunday dinners, and late-night talks with David. Now it belonged to someone who thought I was a burden. I stood outside under the Texas night sky, clutching my coat around me. The air was cool, sharp, almost bitter. I thought about the garage, the only thing David had left me. Why, after 3 decades of marriage, would he think a garage was enough? I got into my old car and started driving. The city lights faded behind me as I headed toward the outskirts of Dallas, where the roads grew quieter and the shadows deeper. My car rattled over potholes, the headlights cutting narrow beams through the dark. When I finally pulled up in front of the garage, my stomach twisted. The building looked forgotten, abandoned. Its paint was peeling, its roof sagging, weeds curling along the pavement. It was the kind of place people drove past without a second glance. This was my inheritance. This was what David thought I deserved. I sat in the car for a long time, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe past the lump in my throat. Was this some kind of cruel joke? Did he not love me the way I thought he did? But then I remembered the way he used to look at me, the way he held me when I cried, the way he always said, "Trust me, Maria. I'll take care of you." I took a shaky breath and stepped out of the car. The gravel crunched under my shoes as I walked toward the garage doors. The night air bit against my skin. My hands trembled as I fished the keys out of my purse, the ones Mr. Harris had given me. The keys clinked in my palm, small and unassuming, yet suddenly heavy with meaning. I slid one into the lock. It turned more easily than I expected. I hesitated, my heart thudding against my ribs. I didn't know what I expected to find inside: broken tools, rusted machines, maybe piles of junk that David had never gotten around to throwing away. Still, I pushed the door open. The metal groaned in protest, the sound echoing into the night. A faint smell of oil and dust drifted out. And then I froze. Inside, under the dim glow of a single bulb, row after row of gleaming cars stretched across the space. Not junk, not scrap metal, but polished, classic cars, antiques in pristine condition, their chrome catching the light like mirrors. My breath caught in my throat. I stepped closer, my hand pressed against my mouth. Each car was a masterpiece, sleek, elegant, rare. I didn't know much about cars, but even I could see they were worth a fortune. David had kept them hidden here, away from the world, preserved like treasures. My knees wobbled, and I reached for the doorframe to steady myself. This wasn't a rundown garage. This was a vault. A treasure chest. Tears spilled down my cheeks, but this time they weren't born of despair. They were tears of awe, of relief, of love. David hadn't abandoned me. He hadn't left me with nothing. He had left me something greater than I could have imagined. Something that, in his quiet, deliberate way, he had known I would one day discover. I pressed my palm to my chest, feeling the rapid beat of my heart. "Oh, David," I whispered. "You didn't forget me after all." The night no longer felt so cold. I stood frozen in the doorway, the night air at my back and the world I thought I knew behind me. Inside that garage, a different world glittered in the dim light. Rows of classic cars stretched out like silent soldiers waiting for orders. Their polished bodies reflected the bulb's glow, sleek curves of a cherry-red convertible, the squared edges of a vintage truck, the smooth elegance of a jet-black sedan. I didn't know their makes or models, but I didn't need to. Even with my ignorance, I understood what I was looking at. Wealth. Care. Intention. I stepped inside, my footsteps echoing against the concrete floor. My fingers brushed the hood of the nearest car. Cool metal beneath my hand, so smooth it could have been a mirror. Dust didn't cling here. These cars had been cared for. "David," I whispered into the silence. "What were you hiding from me?" The bulb overhead flickered slightly, casting shadows across the walls. I took a deep breath and wandered further in. Each car had its own cover folded neatly nearby, as if David had prepared them for someone, me perhaps. On the far wall, wooden shelves held boxes stacked in perfect rows, each one labeled in David's neat handwriting: parts, manuals, invoices, records. It felt less like a forgotten garage and more like a private museum. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. For 30 years of marriage, I thought I knew everything about David. He told me stories of his job as an engineer, about the bridges he designed, about the buildings he was proud of. He told me about his youth in Houston, about how he loved math as a boy. But he had never once told me about this secret world of polished steel and quiet fortune. I walked toward the shelves, my hands trembling. A small desk stood in the corner, tidy, a lamp resting on top. Beside it sat a locked cabinet. I ran my hand along its surface, then remembered the ring of keys in my purse. I pulled them out, my heart pounding. Most were ordinary: car keys, padlock keys, keys I couldn't identify. I tried them one by one until, finally, one slid into the cabinet lock. It turned with a soft click. The door creaked open. Inside were folders, envelopes, and a small leather-bound notebook. My eyes widened as I pulled the notebook free. Its cover was worn, the edges softened by use. I opened it. Page after page, David's handwriting filled the book. Notes, sketches, numbers. Some were records of the cars, their make, year, condition. Others were lists of buyers, collectors, and dealerships. He'd written everything down, carefully, methodically. But what struck me most wasn't the details. It was the first line on the very first page. For Maria. When the time comes, you'll know what to do. My hand shook so badly I had to set the notebook on the desk. Tears blurred my vision. He had planned this. All of it. The garage, the cars, even the notebook. He hadn't left me with nothing. He had left me with everything I would need. I pressed my palm to the page, as if I could feel him through the paper. Why didn't you tell me? I whispered. I spent hours reading through that notebook, flipping pages under the dim light of the lamp. I learned that David had been collecting these cars for years, decades, even. He had restored some himself, others he'd bought and preserved. He had contacts, people who owed him favors, collectors who would pay fortunes for what he had hidden here. It wasn't just a garage. It was a legacy. At some point, I realized how tired I was. My body ached from the day's grief and shocks, but I couldn't bring myself to leave. I dragged an old chair from the corner, sat down at the desk, and let the silence wrap around me. For the first time since the will had been read, I didn't feel useless. I didn't feel discarded. I felt chosen. David had known Daniel wouldn't value this. He'd known his son would only care about money he could spend quickly, luxuries he could flaunt. But me, he'd trusted me with something different. Something lasting. I closed my eyes and leaned back in the chair, my fingers still resting on the notebook. Memories of David filled my mind. His laughter, his warm hand in mine, the way he always said, "One day, Maria, you'll understand how much I trust you." Now I did. When I woke, the faint light of dawn was creeping through the garage windows. My neck ached from sleeping upright, but my mind was sharper than it had been in weeks. I stood and looked around again. This place wasn't just mine now, it was my responsibility. I walked past the cars, running my hand along their surfaces, and whispered to each one like they were secrets I was finally ready to keep. Then, in the far corner, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A small safe built into the wall, its steel door partly hidden by a tarp. My heart leapt. I pulled the tarp aside, my hands shaking with both fear and excitement. The safe had a keyhole. I rushed back to my purse and pulled out the ring of keys. My fingers fumbled as I tried them one by one until, click. The safe door opened. Inside was a single envelope, thick with documents, sealed with David's careful handwriting across the front. It read, "To Maria. Read when you are ready." I clutched the envelope to my chest, my knees nearly giving out. My husband's voice seemed to echo in my ears, calm and certain. "When you are ready." I carried the envelope to the desk, set it down gently, and just stared at it. I wanted to rip it open, to devour whatever secrets it held. But I also feared it. What if it contained instructions I wasn't brave enough to follow? What if it revealed truths I wasn't ready to face? For now, I left it unopened. Instead, I sat there, staring at that envelope as the sun climbed higher, flooding the garage with golden light. For the first time in days, I didn't feel powerless. I didn't feel like a discarded wife or a useless old woman. I felt like a woman standing at the edge of something vast and unknown, with the key to her future resting in her hands. And I knew one thing for certain: Daniel had no idea what his father had truly left behind. I smiled faintly, the first real smile since David's passing. Let my son call me useless. Let him think I was weak. He would learn, soon enough, that his father's trust in me wasn't misplaced. Because this garage wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning. But what lay inside that envelope? I didn't yet know if I was ready for it. I sat there for hours staring at the envelope as if it might burst open on its own. The garage was quiet except for the ticking of the clock on the far wall, a sound I hadn't noticed until now. Every tick was a reminder. David had planned this. He had chosen this for me. And yet, I still hadn't found the courage to break the seal. Finally, as the morning sun filled the garage with warm light, I took a deep breath and whispered to myself, if not now, then when? My fingers tore gently along the flap. Inside, I found several sheets of paper, folded neatly, David's unmistakable handwriting across the top. The sight of it made my throat ache. For a moment, I pressed the letter against my lips, breathing him in as if his scent lingered there. Then I unfolded the first page. "My dearest Maria," it began. Tears pricked my eyes instantly. "If you are reading this, then I am no longer by your side. That thought hurts me even as I write these words, but death comes for us all, and I wanted to leave you more than sorrow. I wanted to leave you strength, and a path forward." I had to pause. My tears blurred the ink. I wiped them away, holding the paper carefully so it wouldn't tear. "I know you may feel betrayed by my will. I know Daniel's inheritance may seem greater than yours. But trust me, Maria, it is not. What I left for him will not last. The penthouse and money will vanish as quickly as he spends them. But what I left for you, the garage, the cars, the records, this is not just wealth. This is foundation. This is stability. This is legacy." I pressed my hand over my heart. He had known. He had understood exactly how Daniel would react, exactly how I would feel. "I hid this side of my life from you not because I wanted to deceive you, but because I wanted to protect you. Collecting these cars, restoring them, planning for their future. It was my quiet passion. It was also my way of building something for us, something no one could touch but you. Every car has a story, every document a purpose. You will find buyers, investors, and even friends among the people listed in my notebook. They will guide you if you trust them. But above all, trust yourself. You are stronger than you realize." The words blurred again as fresh tears rolled down my cheeks. For years, I had doubted myself, told myself I was nothing without David. And here he was, even after death, telling me I was enough. The second page trembled in my hands as I unfolded it. "Do not waste time grieving over what Daniel received. I know my son, and I know his weaknesses. He sees you as fragile, as someone to dismiss. Let him think so. In time, he will learn that underestimating you was his greatest mistake. And perhaps, Maria, through this lesson, he will grow. I still love him, though I cannot condone the man he has become. That is why I left him what I did, something flashy, something fleeting. He must learn humility, and only time will teach him." A bitter laugh escaped my throat. David knew Daniel too well. The letter continued. "In the safe, you will also find important documents, titles, deeds, and a bank account opened in your name. The account is small compared to what Daniel received, but it is seed money. Enough to begin, not enough to be squandered. Use it wisely. The cars, Maria, are worth far more than any penthouse. Some are priceless, if sold to the right hands. Others will continue to grow in value if you choose to hold on to them. Do not rush. Patience will serve you well." I looked toward the safe, my pulse quickening. More secrets, more revelations waited there. The final page of the letter was shorter, but it struck me hardest. "My love, I know this may feel overwhelming. But remember this, you were my greatest treasure. Everything I did with you in my heart. I never doubted you, not once. You have always been my partner, my anchor. And now, even though I am gone, I need you to be the same for yourself. Live. Build. Protect what we created together. And when you feel alone, come to the garage. Here you will always find me. Forever yours, David." By the time I finished reading, I was sobbing so hard my chest hurt. I clutched the pages to me, rocking slightly in the chair, whispering his name over and over. I hadn't realized how desperately I needed to hear from him, even if it was only through ink on paper. When the tears finally slowed, I looked around the garage again. It no longer felt like a cold building filled with metal. It felt alive, filled with David's spirit, his dreams, his trust in me. I turned to the safe, my determination solidifying. Inside, just as David had said, were stacks of documents. Titles for each of the cars, maintenance records, and a thin envelope with the details of the bank account. I opened it and nearly gasped. While it wasn't millions, it was enough to cover months, maybe even a year of expenses. Enough to breathe while I figured out my next steps. Tucked among the papers was something else, a small velvet box. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a simple gold band, worn smooth by time, and beside it, an eternity ring sparkling with diamonds. A note inside read, "The gold band is the beginning of us. The eternity ring is the proof that my love for you never ends. Wear them when you feel lost, and remember you are never alone." Fresh tears threatened, but this time I smiled through them. I slipped both rings onto my finger, their weight grounding me, reminding me of the life we had built together. For the first time since the funeral, I felt more than grief. I felt purpose. I closed the safe and sat at the desk, spreading the documents before me. David had given me not just wealth, but a roadmap. All I had to do was follow it. Still, fear gnawed at me. What did I know about selling cars, dealing with collectors, handling accounts? My entire life I had been a wife, a mother, a homemaker. I had never run anything on my own. But then I remembered his words. Trust yourself. You are stronger than you realize. I repeated them aloud until they felt like mine. I am stronger than I realize. The garage felt different now, less intimidating, more like a partner waiting for me to take the first step. And as much as I dreaded it, I knew eventually Daniel would come looking for me. He would expect to see me broken, defeated, crawling back to him. But when he did, he would find a different woman. Because I wasn't the useless old woman he thought I was. I was Maria Alvarez, wife of David, guardian of his legacy. And I was just getting started. As the sun dipped lower, I locked the garage and stepped outside. The world seemed brighter, sharper, even the crisp autumn air felt new. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of what tomorrow would bring. Because tomorrow, I would begin. And I knew David would be with me, every step of the way. The next morning, I woke with a sense of urgency I hadn't felt in weeks. Sleep had been restless. I dreamed of David's voice calling me to the garage, urging me forward. When I opened my eyes, I knew what I had to do. It was time to stop sitting in silence. It was time to act. The garage greeted me like an old friend when I unlocked the door. Sunlight streamed through the windows, bouncing off the polished hoods of the cars. I breathed in the scent of oil and leather, strangely comforting now. The notebook lay on the desk where I'd left it, waiting for me. I sat down, opened it to the section titled Contacts, and traced my finger along the names. David had written them in careful order, each with notes about who they were and what they could help with. Some were mechanics, some were dealers, others collectors. One name stood out, Thomas Grant, trusted, fair, knows true value. I whispered it aloud. Thomas Grant. David had underlined it twice. That alone was enough to push me toward it. I stared at the number he had written, my heart racing. Could I really just call a stranger? Tell him my husband had passed and I didn't know what to do with a garage full of cars? Would he laugh at me, dismiss me as Daniel had? For a long time, I just sat there, phone in hand, the number half dialed. My stomach twisted with nerves. But then I looked down at the rings on my finger, the plain gold band and the eternity ring. David's reminder. His faith in me. I closed my eyes, breathed deeply, and pressed call. The phone rang twice before a voice answered. Thomas Grant speaking. I nearly hung up, but somehow the words stumbled out. Hello, Mr. Grant. My name is Maria Alvarez. You knew my husband, David. There was silence on the other end for a moment, then a warm, surprised tone. David Alvarez? My God. Maria, I'm so sorry for your loss. David was a good man. I admired him greatly. Relief washed over me. He knew David. This wasn't a stranger after all. Thank you, I managed. He left me the garage. I wasn't sure who else to call, but your name was in his notes. Well, then you did the right thing, Thomas said. His voice was steady, reassuring. I've seen that collection. David showed me some of it years ago. It's remarkable. I'd be glad to help you understand what you have. My throat tightened. Would you come by? I don't know where to start. Of course, he replied without hesitation. Give me your address. I can be there this week. When I hung up, I sat back in the chair, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. I had done it. I had made the first call. It was small, but it was something. I was still smiling faintly when I heard footsteps behind me. The sound sent a chill racing up my spine. I turned, and there he was. Daniel. He stood in the open doorway, his arms crossed, his expression twisted in contempt. So it's true. You're actually living in this dump. I stood quickly, wiping my hands on my skirt. What are you doing here? I came to see if you'd finally come to your senses, he sneered, stepping inside. And I find you sitting here like some crazy old woman, playing house in Dad's garage. Anger burned in my chest, but I forced my voice to stay calm. This garage is mine, Daniel. Your father left it to me. He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. Yeah, because he knew you wouldn't know what to do with it. Meanwhile, I've got the penthouse, real value, not whatever this is. He gestured around at the cars. Scrap metal. I clenched my fists, biting back the urge to shout. David's words echoed in my mind. Let him think so. In time, he will learn. You're wrong, I said softly but firmly. Your father trusted me with this for a reason. Daniel rolled his eyes. Oh please. He probably thought you'd sit here and cry over him until you starved. You can't manage this, Mom. You can't manage anything. Just sell the junk and I'll get you a room in the city. At least then you won't embarrass me. For a moment, I faltered. His words hit old wounds, reopened doubts I thought I had buried. But then my gaze landed on the notebook lying open on the desk, David's handwriting bold and certain. I straightened my shoulders. No, Daniel. I'm not selling. I'm staying here. And I will manage this, whether you believe it or not. His face darkened. You're making a fool of yourself. Better a fool with purpose, I said, surprising myself with the strength in my voice, than a man who wastes everything given to him. His mouth opened, then snapped shut. For once, he had no clever retort. He glared at me, then turned on his heel and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. My legs shook as I sank back into the chair. My hands trembled so badly I had to grip the armrests to steady them. The confrontation had left me shaken, but underneath the fear was something else. Pride. I had stood my ground. David would have been proud too. The rest of the day, I pored over the documents in the safe, trying to make sense of everything. I sorted titles, highlighted notes in the notebook, and even began drafting a list of questions for Thomas. Each small task made the fear shrink and the determination grow. By evening, I was exhausted but alive in a way I hadn't felt for months. When I locked up the garage, I looked back at the cars, at the desk with David's notebook, at the safe hidden in the wall. This is my future, I whispered into the empty air. And no one will take it from me. For the first time since David's passing, I felt the stirrings of hope. But I also knew this was only the beginning. 3 days after my call, I found myself pacing the garage floor like a nervous schoolgirl waiting for a report card. Thomas Grant was due to arrive that morning, and though I had prepared myself as best I could, anxiety coiled tight in my stomach. I had polished the cars, stacked the papers neatly on the desk, and even brewed a thermos of coffee in case he wanted some. It felt ridiculous. I was treating this man like a guest of honor. But in a way, he was. He held knowledge I desperately needed. When I heard the rumble of an engine outside, my heart leapt. I rushed to the door and pulled it open just as a gray pickup truck rolled to a stop. A tall man stepped out, dressed in jeans and a button-down shirt, his salt and pepper hair neatly combed. He carried himself with an easy confidence, the kind I remembered in David's friends. Mrs. Alvarez? He asked warmly, extending a hand. Yes, I said, shaking it with trembling fingers. But please call me Maria. Then you must call me Thomas. His eyes softened. It's been years, but I remember meeting you once at a charity dinner. David introduced us. The memory flickered faintly in my mind, though back then I hadn't thought twice about it. I'm sorry. It's all a blur. No need to apologize. Let's take a look, shall we? When he stepped inside the garage, his expression shifted. His eyes widened slightly, and a low whistle escaped him. Good Lord. He did it. Did what? I asked, almost breathless. Thomas walked slowly among the cars, running his hand lovingly along a hood, crouching to peer at details I barely noticed. He built a collection that rivals museums. I knew he had a passion, but this, he turned to me with an incredulous smile. Maria, do you have any idea what you're sitting on? My cheeks burned. Not really. I mean, I know they're valuable, but... He chuckled softly. Valuable doesn't even begin to cover it. This isn't just wealth. This is history, culture, art. That red convertible? A 1967 Chevy Camaro, pristine. Worth at least $200,000. That black sedan? A Bentley from the 1950s. Rare, nearly irreplaceable. And this, he pointed toward the vintage truck in the corner. This is one of only a handful left in existence. Collectors would kill for it. My knees nearly gave out. Hundreds of thousands. He shook his head. Millions, Maria. Altogether, you're looking at a collection worth millions of dollars. The word hung in the air, heavier than steel. Millions. I sank into the desk chair, my heart pounding. For years I had worried about bills, pinching pennies, planning carefully for the future. And here, all along, David had built something that could change my life forever. Thomas crouched beside me, his voice gentle. I know this must be overwhelming, but David trusted you for a reason. He didn't want these treasures in careless hands. He wanted you to decide their future. Tears welled in my eyes, but I blinked them back. I don't even know where to start. That's why I'm here, Thomas said firmly. I can help you evaluate each car, connect you with honest buyers, and guide you through the process. But I need you to be strong, Maria. There will be people who see you as vulnerable, who'll try to cheat you. You mustn't let them. I nodded slowly, gripping the edge of the desk. David's words echoed in my mind again. Trust yourself. You are stronger than you realize. All right, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Let's do it. For the next few hours, Thomas walked me through the collection, pointing out details, explaining markets, teaching me terms I had never known. He showed me how to spot authentic parts, how to read serial numbers, how to compare values. I scribbled notes furiously, my hand cramping but my mind racing with possibility. At one point, he paused and gave me a long, thoughtful look. You remind me of him, he said softly. I blinked. Of David? Yes. That quiet determination. He trusted people, but he also had a keen sense of when to push back. I see that in you. For a moment, my throat tightened too much to speak. I only nodded, swallowing the lump of emotion. By late afternoon, we sat at the desk, surrounded by papers and notes. I was exhausted but exhilarated. For the first time, I believed I could actually do this. As Thomas packed up his briefcase, he said, I'll come back in a week with formal appraisals. In the meantime, think about what you want to do. Do you want to sell, hold, or perhaps even open the collection to the public? There are options. The thought made me dizzy. A museum? Me? But the seed was planted, and I couldn't stop imagining it. After Thomas left, I locked the garage and sat alone in the quiet. My hands trembled as I picked up David's notebook again, running my fingers over the worn leather cover. You knew, I whispered. You always knew I could do this. But my triumph was short-lived. That evening, as I walked back from the small diner down the road, I spotted Daniel's car parked across the street from the garage. My stomach dropped. He was sitting behind the wheel, his face illuminated by the glow of his phone. I froze, unsure whether to approach him or keep walking. He glanced up, our eyes meeting briefly, and in that instant, I saw it, jealousy sharp and ugly burning in his gaze. I turned away and walked quickly inside, locking the door behind me. My hands shook as I pulled the blinds, my mind racing. Daniel knew. Somehow, he must have learned about Thomas, maybe even overheard us. And if he had, then he knew the garage wasn't worthless. He knew it was worth millions. I sank onto the chair, my chest tight with fear. Daniel was impulsive, reckless, and when money was involved, dangerous. If he believed the garage should have been his, what would he do? I stared at the cars, the safe, the notebook. David had trusted me, but could I really protect all of this? Could I protect myself? And yet, beneath the fear, a spark of resolve ignited. Daniel could mock me. He could spy on me. He could scheme all he wanted. But this garage was mine. This legacy was mine. And I would not let him take it from me. I closed my eyes, hearing David's voice as clearly as if he stood beside me. When you feel alone, come to the garage. Here you will always find me. I opened my eyes and whispered into the silence, I'm not alone. Not anymore. The path ahead would not be easy, but for the first time, I was ready to walk it. The next few days passed in a blur. I kept myself busy, reviewing Thomas's notes, rereading David's notebook, and organizing documents from the safe. For the first time since David's funeral, my life had structure. But beneath that fragile peace was a steady drumbeat of unease. Every time I stepped outside, I felt eyes on me. Sometimes it was a car idling too long near the garage. Sometimes it was the flicker of a shadow at the corner of my vision. I didn't need proof to know who it was. Daniel. He had never been subtle, and patience was not his virtue. I knew he wouldn't sit quietly, not after seeing me stand my ground. And especially not after realizing the garage held more value than he'd imagined. I just didn't know how soon he would strike. It happened on a gray Thursday morning. I was in the garage, carefully cleaning one of the cars, when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. My stomach clenched even before I looked up. Daniel's sleek black car pulled into the driveway, its engine cutting sharply as he parked at an angle that blocked the exit. My pulse quickened. He slammed the door and strode toward me, his jaw tight, his steps sharp and aggressive. We need to talk. I set down the rag in my hand, forcing my voice to stay calm. I don't think we have much to say, Daniel. Oh, we do, he snapped. His eyes darted around the garage, lingering greedily on the cars. I know what this place is worth. Do you think I'm stupid? Millions, Mom. Millions just sitting here, gathering dust while you play curator. My throat tightened, but I held his gaze. This garage is mine. Your father left it to me. That was a mistake, he shot back, his voice dripping with venom. You can't manage this. You don't even know where to start. You'll get cheated, swindled, robbed blind. And then what? You'll come crawling back to me, begging for scraps. Why not save yourself the humiliation and hand it over now? My hands shook, but I clasped them behind my back so he wouldn't see. Your father trusted me with this, Daniel. He wanted me to decide its future, not you. His lips curled into a sneer. Dad was a genius, but he was sentimental. He thought you were stronger than you are. He was wrong. A part of me wanted to scream, to slap him, to remind him of every sacrifice I had made as his mother. But I thought of David's words, let him think so. In time, he will learn. So instead, I straightened my shoulders and said, I won't sell. His face darkened. He stepped closer, his voice low and threatening. Then you'll regret it. I felt the heat of his anger radiating off him. Fear knotted in my chest, but I refused to back down. Leave, Daniel. For a tense moment, I thought he might lash out. His fists clenched, his jaw tightened, and his eyes burned with rage. But then he spat on the floor, turned sharply, and stormed out. The slam of his car door rattled the garage walls, and the tires screeched as he tore away. When the silence settled, my legs gave out. I sank into the nearest chair, my whole body trembling. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at the cars, trying to calm the storm inside me. He wouldn't stop. I knew it now with chilling certainty. Daniel wasn't just angry, he was desperate. And desperation made people dangerous. I needed protection. That night, I sat at the desk and opened David's notebook again, flipping to the section marked Advisors. Alongside Thomas's name, I found another, Linda Carson, attorney, trustworthy. An attorney. Of course. If I wanted to keep this inheritance safe, I needed legal help. The next morning, I called the number. A crisp, professional voice answered, and within minutes, I had an appointment for the following day. Relief washed through me, but nerves quickly followed. I had never dealt with lawyers on my own before. David had always handled the complicated matters. But now, it was my turn. When I arrived at Linda's office, a tidy space in a small brick building downtown, I felt out of place. My clothes were simple, my hands rough from cleaning cars, while everyone around me looked polished and confident. But when Linda greeted me, all my fears eased. She was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, firm handshake, and a voice that carried both warmth and authority. "Maria Alvarez," she said with a smile. "David spoke highly of you. I'm so sorry for your loss." Hearing David's name spoken so gently made my eyes sting. "Thank you. I need your help." We sat in her office, and I explained everything. David's will, the garage, Daniel's behavior. I showed her the documents from the safe and even let her skim parts of the letter David had left me. She listened intently, asking sharp questions, taking notes. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. "Maria," she said, "what you have here is substantial. And your husband was wise to leave it in your hands. But your son, if he continues down this path, could cause trouble. You need legal protection." "What kind of protection?" I asked, my voice wavering. "First, we'll make sure the titles and deeds are fully secured in your name. No loopholes, no questions. Second, I'll draft documents that establish your rights clearly, so Daniel can't contest them. And third, we'll prepare for the possibility that he tries to intimidate or manipulate you. If he crosses the line, we'll be ready." Her calm certainty steadied me. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't fighting alone. "Thank you," I whispered. Linda gave me a reassuring smile. "You're stronger than you think, Maria. And you're not alone in this. David made sure of that." When I left her office, my steps felt lighter. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was fighting back. But my relief didn't last long. That evening, as I walked toward the garage, I noticed the padlock on the side door hanging broken. My stomach dropped. I rushed inside, heart hammering, and my worst fear was confirmed. The desk drawers were open, papers scattered across the floor. Someone had been here. Panic surged through me as I checked the safe. Thank God, it was still locked. But the violation shook me to my core. Daniel. It had to be Daniel. My hands trembled as I picked up the scattered papers, tears blurring my vision. This wasn't just about greed anymore. He was trying to break me, to scare me into giving up. I sat down at the desk, clutching David's notebook to my chest, and for the first time, I spoke aloud into the silence. "David, what do I do?" And in the stillness, I remembered his words, "Trust yourself. You are stronger than you realize." I wiped my tears and straightened my back. No more hiding. No more waiting for Daniel's next move. If he wanted a fight, I would give him one. Because this garage was more than cars, more than money. It was David's legacy. It was my future. And I would not let my own son take it from me. I picked up the phone and dialed Linda's office. When she answered, I said with a steadiness I hadn't felt before, "We need to move faster. He's already trying to break in." Her response was immediate. "Then we'll make sure he can't. Leave this to me, Maria. And hold your ground." As I hung up, I looked around the garage. The cars gleamed under the dim lights, silent witnesses to my battle. "Let him come," I whispered. "I'm ready." And for the first time, I truly believed it. The morning sun streamed through the garage windows as I polished the hood of the dark blue Jaguar. My reflection looked back at me, tired eyes, graying hair tied neatly, but steadier than before. I wasn't the same woman who had wandered in here weeks ago, trembling and lost. This was the car Thomas and I had chosen to sell first. Not the rarest, not the most valuable, but one that would bring enough to test the waters. A man named Mr. Carter, a collector Thomas trusted, was scheduled to come by that afternoon. Every few minutes, I found myself glancing at the clock, my stomach flipping with nerves. Relax, Thomas had told me over the phone the night before. Carter's fair. I wouldn't bring him to you otherwise. Just remember, you're in control. It's your car, your decision. In control. The words rang in my head as I smoothed the cloth across the Jaguar's sleek lines. I was trying to believe them. By the time Thomas arrived, I had cleaned the car twice over and arranged the papers neatly on the desk. He walked in with his usual calm confidence, offering me a reassuring nod. Looks beautiful, he said, running a hand along the car. Carter's going to love it. I clasped my hands together to hide their trembling. What if I say the wrong thing? What if he laughs at me, or tries to cheat me? Thomas shook his head. You won't. And if he does, I'll handle it. But Maria, you're stronger than you think. Just tell the truth. That's all. Before I could reply, the sound of another car pulling into the driveway made my heart leap. Moments later, a tall man in a tailored coat stepped inside. His eyes went immediately to the Jaguar, widening with appreciation. Good heavens, he breathed. That's a beauty. Thomas greeted him warmly. Carter, this is Maria Alvarez, the owner of the collection. Carter turned to me, surprise flickering across his face, but he quickly composed himself and extended a hand. Mrs. Alvarez, a pleasure. I shook his hand firmly, lifting my chin. Welcome. My husband cared for this car for many years. I'd like it to go to someone who will appreciate it. He smiled, clearly impressed. Then you've come to the right man. As he circled the Jaguar, inspecting every detail, I stood beside Thomas, my nerves taut as strings. Carter asked questions, about the history, the condition, the maintenance, and I answered as best as I could, relying on the notes David had left. Each time I spoke, Thomas gave me a subtle nod of approval. Finally, Carter straightened and turned to me. I'll be honest, Mrs. Alvarez. This car is worth more than many realize. Given its condition, I'd offer $150,000. My breath caught. The number felt unreal, too large to even grasp. But I saw the seriousness in his eyes. He wasn't joking. I swallowed hard. That's very generous. Thomas leaned in slightly. It's fair, he whispered. I looked back at Carter. For a moment, fear clawed at me, fear of making the wrong choice, of ruining everything. But then I remembered David's words, trust yourself. I nodded. Then we have a deal. Carter smiled broadly. Excellent. I'll arrange the transfer immediately. The next hour passed in a haze. Papers were signed, hands were shaken, and when Carter drove away in the Jaguar, I stood in the driveway, staring after him. My heart pounded with a strange mix of grief and triumph. The garage felt emptier without the car, but also lighter. And when Thomas placed the check in my hands, my fingers trembled. You did it, he said softly. I stared down at the check, the numbers almost unreal. I did. Tears stung my eyes, but this time, they weren't from despair. They were from pride. For the first time, I had proven, to myself, to Thomas, and maybe even to David, that I could handle this. But that fragile triumph shattered only hours later. It was dark when I locked up the garage and began walking back to the small apartment I was renting nearby. The air was cool, the street quiet. Too quiet. Halfway home, a figure stepped out from the shadows. My breath caught. Daniel. He looked disheveled, his eyes bloodshot, his movements jittery. He reeked faintly of alcohol. Well, well, he sneered. I hear you sold one. Congratulations, Mom. What did you get? A couple hundred? Bet you feel real smart now. I froze, clutching my purse tighter. Daniel, this isn't the place. He cut me off, stepping closer. Don't play games with me. That garage should have been mine. Dad was a fool to give it to you. You can't handle it. You'll lose everything, and when you do, don't come crawling to me. Fear coiled in my gut, but I forced myself to stand tall. I won't lose, Daniel. Your father believed in me. And after today, I believe in myself too. his face twisted with rage. He grabbed my arm, his grip bruising. "You're pathetic. You think selling one car makes you special? You're nothing without me. Nothing." Pain shot through my arm, but I refused to cry out. Instead, I looked him square in the eye. "I am not afraid of you anymore." For a moment, something flickered in his gaze. Uncertainty, maybe even fear. Then he shoved my arm away and stepped back, his chest heaving. "You'll regret this," he spat, before storming off into the night. I stood frozen, shaking, until he disappeared from sight. My arm throbbed, but inside me, something had shifted. He couldn't break me. Not anymore. When I finally reached my apartment, I sat at the small kitchen table, clutching the check from Carter. The numbers stared back at me, undeniable proof that I could do this. But alongside the pride was a new determination. Daniel wouldn't stop. He had already broken into the garage once, already tried to intimidate me. The next time, he might not stop at threats. I picked up the phone and called Linda. When she answered, I said firmly, "We need to take stronger steps. Daniel's escalating. I won't let him take this from me." There was silence for a moment, then her calm voice, "Good. That's the resolve I need from you, Maria. We'll act fast." When I hung up, I looked at David's notebook lying on the table. My tears blurred the words, but I whispered them aloud anyway. "I'm learning, David. I'm stronger than I thought. And I won't stop now." The garage was no longer just a relic of David's past. It was my future. And I would fight for it. I hardly slept the night after Daniel grabbed me. My arm was sore where his fingers had dug into the skin, but the ache in my heart was worse. How had my son become this? How had the boy I once rocked to sleep grown into a man who looked at me as if I were his enemy? Yet beneath the sorrow was a fire I hadn't felt in years. For too long, I had let fear guide me, fear of failure, fear of being alone, fear of my own weakness. But no more. By morning, I knew what had to be done. Linda called me early, her voice brisk but reassuring. "Maria, I've drafted the protective orders. Once we file, Daniel won't have a legal leg to stand on. And if he tries anything further, he'll face consequences." I swallowed hard. "Thank you, Linda. I need to know this garage is safe." "It will be," she promised. "But Maria, this isn't just about protecting the garage. It's about protecting you. Don't forget that." Her words lingered with me as I walked to the garage later that morning. The sight of the cars, gleaming in the sunlight, filled me with a strange mix of grief and pride. They were reminders of David, yes, but they were also proof that I could step into a world I never thought I belonged to. I spent the day cataloging more documents, preparing for the next sale. Each paper I sorted felt like a brick laid in the foundation of my new life. But just as the afternoon light began to fade, the sound of an engine roared outside. My heart sank. I knew that sound. Daniel. I barely had time to move before the garage door banged open. He stormed inside, eyes wild, movements unsteady. He wasn't alone. 2 men followed him, rough-looking, strangers with hard eyes. "Mom," Daniel said, his voice dripping with false sweetness. "We're going to end this little charade right now." My breath caught. "Daniel, what are you doing?" "What I should have done weeks ago." He gestured to the men. "These guys are here to help me move some things. Starting with the cars. You can keep your memories, Mom, but the real value? That's mine." Panic surged through me, but I forced myself to stand tall. "No. These cars are not yours. They belong to me." His face twisted with rage. "They should have been mine," he shouted, his voice echoing off the garage walls. "You don't deserve them. You don't deserve anything Dad built." The 2 men began moving toward one of the cars. My pulse raced. If they drove those cars away, I'd lose everything. I grabbed my phone, my hands trembling, and dialed Linda. But before I could speak, one of the men yanked it from my hand and tossed it across the floor. Terror clawed at me, but then something inside me snapped. "No more fear. No more silence. Get out." I shouted, my voice ringing louder than I thought possible. "This is my garage, my inheritance, my life. And I will not let you take it. The men hesitated, startled by my sudden fury. Even Daniel faltered, his eyes narrowing. You think you can stop me? He sneered. You're nothing but an old woman. No, I said, my voice steady as steel. I'm your mother. And I am stronger than you will ever understand. Before he could reply, headlights flared outside. Another car pulled up, and Thomas stepped out, followed by a police cruiser. Relief flooded through me so fast my knees nearly buckled. Linda must have called them when my line went dead. The officers stormed in, their voices commanding. Step away from the vehicles. Now. The two men backed off instantly, their bravado crumbling under the weight of authority. Daniel, however, stood frozen, his face pale, his fury boiling over into something pitiful. Mom, he said, his voice breaking, you can't do this to me. I'm your son. Tears blurred my vision, but I shook my head. And I'm your mother. But I will not let you destroy what your father built, or what I'm building now. Love doesn't mean surrender, Daniel. The officers took him by the arm, ignoring his protests. The two men were led out as well. The sound of sirens filled the air as they were taken away, and when the garage fell silent again, I finally let myself breathe. Thomas walked over, placing a steady hand on my shoulder. You were incredible, Maria. Brave. David would be proud. I wiped my tears with the back of my hand, my whole body trembling with release. I didn't feel brave. I just couldn't let him win. That's what bravery is, he said softly. The rest of the night was a blur of statements, paperwork, and police reports. Linda arrived later, her calm presence anchoring me. This will hold, Maria, she said firmly. He won't be able to touch the garage again. You stood your ground, and the law will protect you now. When everyone finally left and I locked the garage for the night, I stood alone in the quiet space. The cars gleamed under the dim lights, their reflections shimmering like silent witnesses. I sank into the chair at the desk, David's notebook before me. My fingers traced his handwriting, the words that had guided me through fear and doubt. Trust yourself. You are stronger than you realize. For the first time, I truly believed it. The next weeks were filled with change. With Thomas's guidance, I sold another car, then another. Each deal handled on my terms, each sale a step toward independence. The money went into a secure account Linda helped me set up, ensuring the garage was both safe and profitable. But more than that, I discovered something unexpected: joy. I loved learning the stories behind the cars, meeting collectors, hearing them marvel at what David had preserved. I was no longer just David's widow. I was Maria Alvarez, the woman who had taken a rundown garage and turned it into her future. Daniel remained a shadow in the distance. I heard he was facing charges, and though part of me ached for him, I knew the choice had been his. My love for him would never die, but I would not let it chain me anymore. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the garage in gold, I stood among the cars and whispered into the stillness. David, I did it. I found my strength. I'm not afraid anymore. The silence answered, but in my heart, I felt him there, proud, smiling, watching me. And for the first time in a long, long while, I smiled too. It has been 5 years since that night in the garage. 5 years since I stood face to face with my own son and chose to fight, not for wealth, not even for cars, but for my dignity, my independence, my right to be more than what others believed of me. The garage no longer feels like a place of grief. It has become a place of life. The air hums with activity now. Collectors come and go, young mechanics I've hired work carefully under the hoods, and sometimes, just sometimes, I hear laughter echo against the walls. I walk between the cars slowly these days, my steps steady but no longer rushed. Some of the collection remains. I could never bring myself to sell them all, but many have gone on to new owners who cherish them as David once did. Each sale was like releasing a memory, not with sorrow anymore, but with pride. The money has given me security, yes, but more than that, it has given me freedom. I live comfortably, without fear of tomorrow. I even travel now, something David and I always dreamed of but never quite managed. And yet, no matter where I go, I always return here, to this garage. It is home. As for Daniel, Our relationship remains strained, though not entirely broken. After his arrest, he faced consequences that sobered him, though he has not fully changed. He lives in New Jersey still, chasing a life of comfort and status. We speak occasionally carefully, as if both of us are afraid of reopening old wounds. I still love him, he is my son, but I no longer let his anger or his choices define me. That has been the hardest lesson of all, that love does not mean surrender, and motherhood does not mean silence. Thomas has become more than an advisor, he is a friend. A true friend, the kind who answers the phone at midnight when doubt creeps back in, the kind who never lets me forget how far I've come. Linda too has remained by my side, her wisdom steadying me when storms rise. And then there is me. Maria Alvarez. Once called a useless old woman, once cast aside, now standing firm in a life I built with my own hands. I smile when I think of it, how David must be laughing somewhere saying, "I told you so." Sometimes, in the quiet evenings, I sit at the old desk in the garage and open his notebook. The pages are worn now, the ink faded in places, but his words still leap off the paper with the same power they did that first night. Trust yourself. You are stronger than you realize. I carry those words with me everywhere. They are no longer just David's voice, they are my own. I have learned that strength is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move forward despite it. It is saying no when the world expects you to bow. It is choosing to live fully, even when loss has hollowed you out. This garage was once David's dream. Now it is mine too. But it is more than that. It is proof that no matter how others see you, you can rise. You can fight. You can become someone even you didn't know you could be. So when the younger mechanics ask me for advice, when they tell me they don't think they're ready, I smile and repeat the words that saved me. Trust yourself. You are stronger than you realize. Because if I could find my strength here, among dust and grief and memories, then anyone can. And that, I think, is the true legacy David left me. Not the cars, not the money, not even the garage. But the belief that I was never useless. That I was always enough. And now, at last, I believe it too. If this journey touched your heart, please like this video, share it with others who need a reminder of their strength, and subscribe for more powerful stories of resilience, redemption, and hope.